Madison, I know that with the wheelchair, you had a recovery period. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, but then you made a decision. I think you started college somewhere else other than your original planned path, but you ultimately made a decision not to finish college. Tell us a little bit about the recovery and then your transition away from college.
Yeah, so my recovery period lasted, I would say, probably a year and a half. It was very difficult. It was a lot of setbacks, but eventually, with the support of a loving family, got through it, so that was great. And my recovery is still in process. But I decided to go to a small school outside of Washington, D.C. It was a great school. And when I went there, I went through an entire year. And I really struggled with, why do I want to go to college? Is it just because it's some cultural norm, or is it because I feel like I really need to? And now my fiance, she's a medical provider. She works in anesthesia. That's someone who I absolutely think needs to go to college. Or I've got several friends who are pre-law. They're about to go and become lawyers and pass the bar and move on. Those people I think that really desperately need to go to college. But you know what? I think that we do ourselves a disservice when the American nuclear family defines success of their children by if they got their kid to a 4-year degree school. Because I believe that, having more and more children who have a 4-year degree in Egyptology, one, it saddles them with extreme debt, which we have got to do something about the debt system when it comes to student loan debt in our country, because it's creating a generation of eternal renters. And so we've got to figure out a way to do that. And I do not mean free college for everyone. But secondly, I think that we need to start bringing honor and integrity and dignity back to the trades. We need to give more money and more funding to trade schools, people getting apprenticeships, because I'll tell you, a lot of my friends who are just graduating from college, maybe going for their master's, they're, $60,000, $100,000 in debt? Whereas a lot of my friends who decide to become plumbers or pipe fitters or they're linemen working on our power lines, they're making $80,000 a year. They just bought their first house and they had a great down payment, and they're on track to be, as many of the books you'll read, especially The Millionaire Next Door, they're on track to be that millionaire next door when they're 40 years old. And there's a lot of dignity in that. And so I'll tell you, I made the decision for myself because I realized what I want to, the career path I want to take in life is I want to own a company. That didn't require for me to have a degree. And, one of my other friends made that very same decision. So he went back to Texas. He started a company out there, firework and a steel company. He's doing a great job. And then I came back here in North Carolina, was doing a lot of motivational speaking, then started a real estate investment firm. And so that's all been going very well. But then when I decided I was going to start running for Congress, I actually called my friend who went back to Dallas and started his company. I said, hey, any chance you could put your life on hold and come help me for a little while? And he came out here. He's running my campaign. And
You've done that to a couple friends, I think.
I have done that to a couple friends, including the friend you mentioned earlier, Lance Barnett. I met him at a mock government camp when we were very young. And it's actually just a little over a decade ago now. And I remember when we were leaving, him and we both ran for president in this camp, and we won. He was my vice president, and he is probably one of the most exceptional human beings I've ever met, Lance is. And I will tell you, we made a bet, which I did not think I was actually going to be the victor of it, but I said, I'll race you to Congress. And it was just a joke. I never planned on actually being in Congress until much, much later in life.
So Lance is actually, instead of trying to win this bet himself, he's actually on your team now, helping you win the bet against him.
Indeed, that is a true friend right there.
Well, great. Well, you mentioned a few things. The student loan crisis. You're going to be, if you're in Congress, you'll be the youngest member, 25. You didn't go to college, so it doesn't sound like you have any college debt. But you're going to be probably looked to by a lot of peers of people who are saddled with college debt or thinking about going to college and thinking about paying these high expenses. Is there anything you thought about that you could do from having a platform in Congress to help tackle the student loan crisis in this country, student debt crisis?
Absolutely. Well, you with this podcast, I'm sure you talk to a significant amount of entrepreneurs, and they're all out to make a dollar. They're all out to go create a product and a service that brings value to somebody else's life, and we have a mutually beneficial system where then they give them money and they give them their service or their product. And now let me just pitch you this idea. Imagine, a used car salesman. I've got a great friend named Kevin Geegan. He owns Auto Advantage here in Western North Carolina. It's all across the country. He's very successful. If I went up to him and I was looking to buy a car, and he wants to sell a car for whatever the highest price he can get away for. That's what every entrepreneur wants to do. Imagine if he knew that whatever amount of money he asked me to pay, the federal government would guarantee a loan to that. He'd be charging $500,000 a car. It would not make sense for him not to. And that's what's going on in our colleges right now. We have these federally guaranteed student loan programs which because of that, these colleges have decided, you know what, let's just keep jacking the prices up. Let's go, we're at $30,000 a year. Let's make it $30,000 a semester. Let's just keep raising the prices because they know that they've created a culture where everyone feels like they need to go to college. And then they also have created a system by which every single student loan is guaranteed by the government so everyone can get a student loan, regardless of what their degree is going to be in. You might get a degree in art, and there are some artists who are extremely successful, but the majority of artists are out there, they're scraping by $60,000, $40,000, $100,000 a year, and then they have $60,000 in debt on top of all their other life expenses. It makes it to where they'll never get out from under that until what? They're 50 years old?
Right, and they could have done so many other things at that age, too. They could have been making money, too, instead of spending money and getting into crisis. When I started this podcast 5 years ago, I had my good friend Isaac Morehouse on. Isaac runs he started a company called Praxis, and then now he started a new company called Crash, and we had him back. I think it was on episode 58 or something. But he basically takes kids that are roughly in high school that don't necessarily want to go to college, and instead they go through and they have an apprenticeship program with an entrepreneur. It's like a 10-month program. They have a curriculum module, and the program is paid for by the amount of money they're making from the job. So by the time they get out 10 months, they had an apprenticeship, a real job with a real entrepreneur where they've learned real on-the-job skills, and everything that they paid to Praxis is paid for. And by the way, most of those young people end up getting hired by the people that originally hired them to stay permanently, or now they have the experience to go somewhere else with a resume. So we've had a good consistency on this podcast of featuring people like Isaac and others that maybe didn't go to college but are entrepreneurs. And now Isaac did go to college, but he then realized, hey, other people don't need to do this, and let me show them the way.
That's incredible, and I think it's exactly what the government needs to start doing. It's exactly what Isaac's doing. So he is forging a path, a real trailblazer. That's incredible.